When Clint Eastwood stepped onto Jimmy Kimmel's stage that night, he wasn't there to sell a movie. He was walking in with decades of unfiltered defiance written into every line on his face. The crowd expected charm and small talk. What they got was a storm. What started as a friendly interview turned into a live confrontation about truth, power, and the price of silence. Backstage, his longtime aide Maggie had warned the crew, "Don't push him. Don't try to make a joke out of him." They laughed it off. They shouldn't have, because the moment Clint sat down, the air changed. The tension wasn't just in the studio. It crawled through every camera lens and into living rooms across the country. This wasn't just another segment. It wasn't even about a chair. It was about who still has the right to speak and who's been pretending to listen. And before the night was over, Clint Eastwood would make sure everyone, including Jimmy Kimmel, found out the hard way. Clint Eastwood walked into the backstage hallway with that heavy kind of silence. Maggie, his longtime aide, crossed her arms and said flatly to a nervous producer in a headset, "Don't joke with him. He's not here to play a character. He is the character." The kid half laughed, like he thought she was exaggerating, until she looked him dead in the eyes. Then he just nodded and backed away. Meanwhile, Clint sat alone on a steel chair that looked too modern for him. He held a piece of paper, 5 lines typed neatly. No politics, 2012 speech, no gun control, no civil rights, no voting talk. His thumb rested on the last line. He stared at it for a long second, then folded the paper slowly and slipped it inside his blazer pocket, over his heart. His jaw tightened just slightly. It wasn't anger, it was a warning. Maggie caught the look and knew. She leaned close, her voice low. "They're gonna push." Clint didn't look at her. He just said, "Yeah, they always do." When Clint stepped onto Jimmy Kimmel's stage, the audience erupted in cheers. Jimmy smiled wide, his talk show charm at full power. Clint Eastwood, everyone, the legend himself. Laughter, applause, and fake enthusiasm filled the air like static. Jimmy started soft, asking about the new film, Safe Ground. "You're back behind the camera again, huh? Tell us about it." Clint leaned forward slightly. "It's about a man trying to protect his land from being swallowed by people who think everything can be bought." Jimmy nodded, grinning. "Sounds like a metaphor for Hollywood." Clint looked at him. "No, it's about land." The audience chuckled, unsure if it was a joke. Jimmy laughed anyway, tapping his cue cards. Then he tried to lighten things up. "You've always had that tough cowboy spirit, huh? Still wake up and ride horses every morning?" Clint's eyes flicked toward him. "I ride when I feel like it." The room laughed again, thinner this time. Jimmy smirked. "Man, you never change. Still got that attitude." Clint tilted his head slightly. "When people run out of real questions, they usually start calling honesty an attitude." The laughter stopped. A beat of silence followed. Jimmy blinked, caught off guard. "Well, that's one way to put it," he said, forcing a smile. Clint didn't smile back. Maggie, watching from the wings, whispered to herself, "Here it comes." The air in the studio shifted the second the big screen behind them flickered. That old clip came on, grainy, raw, the image of Clint Eastwood in 2012 talking to an empty chair. The crowd laughed awkwardly, unsure if they were supposed to find it funny or tense. Maggie froze backstage. Her hand went to her forehead. "Oh my God," she muttered. "They actually pulled the chair stunt. Idiots. Absolute idiots." Jimmy turned toward Clint with that trademark grin, the one that usually disarms anyone sitting across from him. "Just a little throwback, Clint," he said, chuckling. "Who were you talking to that night, huh? The president? The press? Or maybe just the chair?" He leaned back, clearly enjoying the setup. But Clint didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He turned his head slowly, fixing Jimmy with a stare that could have cut through steel. His voice came out low, steady, with the quiet menace of a man who'd buried too many lies already. "No, Jimmy. I was talking to the space where men used to have honor before they learned how to fake it for applause." The crowd went silent, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Jimmy's smile twitched. His cue cards trembled just a little. He tried to laugh it off. "Well, hey, we all fake it a little for TV, right? That's part of the job. Clint tilted his head, eyes narrowing. That's the difference between us. You fake it for ratings. I bleed for what I say. A few people in the audience gasped. Someone laughed too loud, then stopped when Clint didn't move. Jimmy blinked, his voice tightening. All right, come on, Clint. It's just a bit of fun. People like seeing you loosen up a little. I'm not here to dance for your punchlines, Clint shot back. You wanted the man from the movies. He's sitting right here. Just not smiling. The studio lights suddenly felt hotter. Jimmy leaned forward, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like one. You know, people thought that whole chair thing was kind of crazy. Some even said you lost it that night. Clint's lip twitched, but it wasn't amusement. People say a lot of things when the truth makes them nervous. Jimmy tried to recover, speaking faster now. Well, I guess we can agree it made great TV. Clint smiled faintly, cold, knowing. Yeah, TV loves watching something real die slow, the audience murmured, unsure whether to clap or stay still. Every eye in the room locked on the two men. You could feel it building, something raw, electric, almost dangerous. Jimmy swallowed hard, his grin gone for good. You really take this stuff seriously, don't you? Clint's gaze didn't waver. If more people took something seriously, Jimmy, maybe the world wouldn't need men like me to remind them what a backbone looks like. For a long moment, the room didn't breathe. Then the sound guy fumbled, dropping something off stage. A sharp clack that echoed like a gunshot. No one laughed this time. Jimmy looked at Clint, pale under the lights. Clint didn't move, didn't blink. He leaned in just enough for his voice to hit the mic like a threat disguised as truth. You wanted a moment for your show? Congratulations. You just got one you'll never edit out, backstage, Maggie whispered to herself. Here it is. The storm and the crowd, half stunned, half spellbound, knew she was right. Jimmy leaned forward now, his smile gone, eyes sharp. The joke had died, and something else had taken its place. Ego, pride, the need to win back his stage. All right, Clint, he said, voice tightening. You talk a lot about standing your ground, about truth and honor. But tell me this, when the whole country was out in the streets, shouting for justice, where were you? The audience murmured, sensing the hit. A few clapped, others stayed quiet, waiting to see if Clint would dodge. Clint didn't. He leaned back in his chair, unbothered, his tone calm enough to sting. I was where the cameras weren't. Where people fight with their hands, not their hashtags. The room shifted again. The crowd started to stir, some impressed, others restless. Jimmy chuckled, but there was no humor in it. That's a nice line. Real poetic. But people need to see you stand up. Otherwise, it's just talk. Clint turned to him, his stare heavy, deliberate. I've been standing since before you needed permission to speak the truth on your own show. A ripple went through the audience. Some clapped. Others booed. The split grew wider, louder. Jimmy forced a grin, but his hand gripped the desk too tight. You think you're the only one who cares about the truth? You think sitting there, lecturing everyone, makes you some kind of savior? Clint's eyes didn't move. He said quietly, No. I just don't mistake a monologue for a mirror. Jimmy blinked, thrown off. What's that supposed to mean? Clint leaned forward, voice dropping low, each word cutting like a blade. It means you talk to cameras, not people. You sell outrage like it's comedy. You make noise, and then call it courage. The audience gasped. A few people clapped instinctively before realizing the tension. Jimmy's jaw clenched, the showman mask slipping. You done? He said, half laughing. Clint shrugged slightly. You asked where I was, Jimmy. I'm right here. The question is, where the hell are you? The studio cracked open with sound. Cheers, boos, shouting, clapping. Maggie backstage whispered, He's losing the crowd. But it wasn't Clint she meant. It was Jimmy. Jimmy tried to rise above it, waving his hand toward the audience. Relax, folks. We're just having a conversation. Clint interrupted, not raising his voice, but somehow cutting through the noise anyway. No, you're performing a conversation. That's the problem, silence. The kind that hurts your ears. Clint sat back again, still, steady, untouchable. Jimmy swallowed, his smile trembling like glass about to break. Maggie whispered to herself, "Round one. Clint." Jimmy forced a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "Come on, Clint," he said, voice tightening under the lights. "You know this is just a late-night show. People tune in to laugh, not to get a lecture." Clint didn't even blink. His eyes stayed locked on Jimmy, steady and sharp. "That's exactly the problem," he said quietly. "Everyone keeps saying it's just a show. That's how a country turns into a stage play. The only thing missing is someone brave enough to admit it's all scripted." The crowd went still, the laughter from seconds ago gone like smoke. Jimmy shifted in his chair, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "You're taking this too seriously, Clint. We're here to have a little fun, that's all." Clint leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice low and deliberate. "Fun? Is that what you call pretending? Watching people fall apart on camera while you toss punchlines to fill the silence?" Jimmy blinked, caught off guard. "Hey, easy," he said, trying to joke it off. "I make people laugh for a living." Clint's jaw tightened. "Yeah, and the world burns while you keep the laugh track running." The audience gasped softly, some clapping, others murmuring. Jimmy straightened his back, raising his chin. "All right," he said. "You think I'm part of the problem? You think I'm just another guy reading lines? I built this show from nothing, Clint. I worked my ass off for it." Clint nodded once. "And somewhere along the way, you forgot what a voice is for." Jimmy frowned, the charm in his tone slipping. "You want to sit there and preach? Fine, but don't act like you're some untouchable hero. You've made mistakes too," Clint smiled. Cold, controlled. "Difference is, I didn't edit mine before airing them." The crowd reacted instantly, half applauding, half gasping. The tension was electric now, pulsing through every seat. Jimmy's voice cracked just slightly. "You know what, Clint? You talk about truth like it's a weapon, but maybe you just like hearing yourself swing it." Clint didn't move, didn't blink, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "No, Jimmy. I just got tired of watching men with microphones forget what silence means." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Silence isn't weakness. It's waiting for the right moment to speak." Jimmy scoffed, trying to smirk, but the sweat on his temple gave him away. "And what? You think this is your moment?" Clint leaned closer, his tone barely above a whisper, but cutting straight through the air. "No, son. This is your reckoning." The studio went dead quiet. The lights hit them like interrogation lamps now. Two men, one stage, no script left to hide behind. Jimmy swallowed, but he had nothing. His cue cards hung loose in his hand, trembling slightly. Clint sat back, voice softer but heavier. "You said it's just a show. Then let's call this what it really is, a confession." For a few long seconds, no one moved. Not the crew, not the crowd. Then a single clap echoed from the back, followed by another and another, until the entire audience was torn in half. Some cheering, others shouting over them. Jimmy stared out at the chaos, trying to find his footing, but it was too late. Clint Eastwood had already taken the show, the lights, and the truth, and turned them all against him. Clint leaned forward, his gaze locked straight into the camera lens like he was staring through every screen in America. His voice came out deep and steady, the kind of calm that makes the ground shake. "That chair," he said, "was never empty. It's filled with ghosts, the ones this country forgot. The ones who worked themselves to the bone, lost their homes, buried their kids while men with microphones acted out compassion like it was part of the script." The crowd murmured, the energy turning raw, restless. Jimmy blinked hard, trying to cut in. "Clint, hey, this is live TV," he said, standing up now, trying to laugh, but it came out shaky. Clint turned to him, unflinching. "Yeah," he said quietly, "and for once, it's alive." The audience erupted. Applause, boos, shouts, everything blending into one wild roar. The cameras shook, the band froze, and the control room was chaos. Maggie, watching from the side, whispered under her breath, "He warned them." Jimmy tried again, raising his voice. Okay, let's take a breather. "You've made your point. Clint didn't move. He pointed toward the chair next to Jimmy's desk. "No," he said. "I'm not done." He looked back into the lens. "That chair's not a prop. It's a reminder. Every time you ignore the people who can't afford to be here, every time you cut away from the ones who don't fit your segment, that chair fills up again, one ghost at a time." The crowd split right down the middle, half cheering, half shouting back. Jimmy ran a hand through his hair, frustration breaking through his fake smile. "Clint, you're turning this into a political rally." Clint didn't blink. "No, Jimmy. You turned it into a circus. I'm just showing you who's holding the leash." A few people gasped out loud. The sound guy muttered, "Jesus Christ." Jimmy took a step closer, his voice sharp now. "You think you're saving the world with a speech on my show?" Clint stood too, slow, deliberate. "I think I'm reminding it what a real one sounds like." For a heartbeat, the room went silent again. Then it exploded. Cheers, whistles, screams, and angry shouts all colliding at once. The camera feed shook from the noise. Clint turned back toward it, eyes burning under the hot lights. "You wanted the truth?" he said, voice booming over the chaos. "Well, here it is, and for the first time in years, you don't get to edit it." The audience was on its feet now, some clapping like they'd witnessed a revolution, others yelling for the show to cut to commercial. Jimmy's face was pale, his words drowned out completely by the storm he'd unleashed. Clint stepped back, still facing the crowd. "That's enough pretending," he said softly. "Let them see what real sounds like." Then he dropped the mic on the desk. Not out of anger, but finality. The thud echoed through the studio, heavy and real. For a few seconds, no one spoke. No one moved. It was live television, but it didn't feel like TV anymore. It felt like history cracking open. Clint stood slowly, his chair scraping against the studio floor with a sound that felt louder than any applause. The crowd froze. No one dared move. No one dared breathe. Jimmy stood across from him, pale under the bright lights, cue cards hanging useless in his hand. Sweat glistened on his forehead as the smile he'd worn all night finally cracked and fell away. Clint took a few steps toward the edge of the stage, boots echoing in the stillness. Every eye followed him. The cameras, the crew, the audience that no longer knew if they were watching television or truth unfold. He stopped halfway, then turned back toward Jimmy. The host's lips parted like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. Clint looked at the chair beside the desk, the same one that had started it all, a symbol now heavy with everything that had just happened. His voice came quiet, steady, and final. "It's not empty anymore, Jimmy," he said. "You're sitting in it now. And the whole damn country's watching the line hit like a gunshot in a canyon. Echoing, lingering, unstoppable." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, electric. The kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath before something breaks. No outro music. No applause cue. Just the uneven rhythm of real human reaction. Gasps, half-hearted claps, and the shuffling of people trying to process what they'd just seen. Clint turned and walked toward the curtain, his steps unhurried, his shoulders straight. Jimmy didn't move. The band stayed frozen, instruments untouched. Somewhere in the control room, a producer whispered, "Cut the feed," but nobody did. The cameras kept rolling as Clint disappeared behind the curtain, swallowed by the darkness backstage. The crowd erupted then, not in celebration, not in outrage, but in chaos. The sound was messy, real, like a collective heartbeat losing its rhythm. And when the studio lights dimmed, that chair beside Jimmy's desk stayed there, empty, glowing under a single spotlight. It wasn't a prop anymore. It was a reminder. And in that silence, Clint Eastwood didn't need to say another word. The legend had already spoken. The clip hit the internet before the studio lights even cooled. Within minutes, millions had seen it. Clint Eastwood standing, staring down Jimmy Kimmel, walking off stage without a word. No edits, no cuts, no background music. Just raw truth caught live. Twitter, TikTok, news outlets. It spread like wildfire. Clint Eastwood ends late-night fakery. The chair speaks again. Was that real? The hashtag stacked faster than the servers could handle. Backstage was chaos. Assistants yelled into headsets. producers argued over blame. Nate, the young one who had pushed for the chair bit, slammed his headset on the table. "You happy now?" Reed snapped, voice rough. "You wanted viral. Congratulations, you just burned down the show." Nate shot back. "Come on, man, this is history. People are talking about it." Reed's jaw clenched. "People talk about train wrecks too. Doesn't mean they want another one." Maggie stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching the storm unravel. No panic in her, just quiet resignation. Through the glass window, she could see the glow of Clint's SUV pulling away under the studio floodlights. He didn't look back. He never did. The younger crew members were still babbling, replaying the moment on their phones, arguing over whether it was staged or real. Maggie shook her head slowly. "They'll never get it," she muttered. Reed turned toward her. "Did you know he was going to go off like that?" Maggie gave a half smile, one corner of her mouth barely lifting. "No," she said softly, "but I warned you what would happen if you pushed him." She looked out the window again, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "People always think they can control Clint until the moment he decides to tell the truth." Outside, the night stretched quiet and cold. The city glowed with screens replaying the same clip over and over. The walk-off, the silence, the stare. Every frame burned into memory, and somewhere out there, Clint Eastwood sat in the back of a car, watching nothing, saying nothing, while the world argued over what he'd meant. But for him, it didn't matter anymore. He hadn't gone on TV to win. He'd gone to remind everyone what real looked like, and the world hadn't seen that in a long time. If that moment hits you like it hit the world, don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video so more people can see what real looks like when the cameras can't fake it anymore. What do you think? Was Clint out of line, or was he the only one brave enough to say it out loud? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk truth.